I'm Brian Van, SportbikeTrackHere.com, and today we're going to install a set of Spiegler brake lines on a 2017 ABS-equipped Yamaha R6. Okay, stainless steel braided brake lines. Why do I need to install those on my super sweet brand new R6 ABS-equipped bike? Why do I need to do that? Well, the hoses that come on it, the brake hoses that come on it, rubber and metal combination. The rubber expands under pressure. Right? You squeeze this can expand. The hotter they get, the more they expand. The rubber over time also degrades, right? And they can come apart. I've never seen that on a modern sport bike. Some of the older BMW models, you see those lines fail. But it's really about power and feel. Out of all the mods you'll do to your bike, I promise you this, the amount of money you'll invest in this brake line compared to say an exhaust or tune or something like that, you're going to notice more performance gains from this than anything else and invest the least amount of money in it. Okay, now let's talk about what it took to get the install done and the tools that I used to do it. I'm going to come right out and let you know that installing these brake lines on this bike and keeping the ABS system installed on the bike. We have kits that will delete the ABS so that you're mastered to calipers, more traditional setup. Or we have the kit that integrates with the factory ABS so you retain that function. Installing this one is significantly more challenging in my opinion. You'll see that as we go through this long video installing them on the bike. Spiegler did a nice job with the instructions. If I had any critique here, maybe the pictures could be a little bigger, maybe the pictures could be in color, but at the end of the day, they definitely get the job done. You're going to want to study these if you're installing them on the bike for sure. Tools that I used, for the most part, very common hand tools. Some Motion Pro ball end Allens, those are nice. Some T-handles, I had a 4, 5, and a 6, I believe. Common wrenches, 8, 10, I think I had an 11. I'm not sure why the 14's there, but it is. Line wrenches, this will be the most exotic piece. Breaking some of the brake pipes loose, it's best to use a proper line wrench. This is going to reduce the possibility of you stripping out the brake line. If you ever worked on brake lines before, you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. So, could you do it without this? You probably could, but it's going to be more challenging, especially when trying not to damage those lines. Common pliers, side cutters, needle nose, a couple of different screwdrivers, safety wire pliers, safety wire, that's for a little trick I'll show you later on in the brake bleeding portion of it. And then I used quarter drive ratchet, a couple extensions, a universal, and a 5mm bit, and that was to service back here, installing the manifolds. A key tool is this bead bleeder bag and hose kit. We got them on the site, we keep them in stock. This helps you bleed the brakes on the bike and not make a mess. It's worth every penny. You can use it over and over again for a long period of time. A couple of shop supplies you're gonna need. Obviously rags. Remember, brake fluid on painted surfaces, it can damage the painted surface. You want to do a lot, and you'll see that throughout this video. You want to really take some steps to manage that and protect the surfaces on the bike from the fluids. If you do get any on there, you want to make sure that you clean them off. A couple of different ways to go here. I'm really into this Maxima stuff, the suspension clean. It's not very harsh, it'll clean that off. I like to follow up with a little SC1, especially when I'm done with the project. If you want to get more hardcore, you can use some heavy duty brake cleaner. This stuff, you want to keep it off sensitive surfaces, and you want to make sure you wipe it and rinse it quickly. And then most importantly, start off with a brand new bottle of brake fluid. Don't put some old brake fluid that was chilling on your shelf in there. You want to start with something that came from a brand new, completely sealed container. Okay, let's go ahead and review the install. And like I said, following is the full install, but we'll give you the cliff notes right now. When I remove the brake lines, I like to evacuate all the fluid from the bike using a vacuum bleeder with my air compressor. So I do that first, then I remove everything. The parts of the installation here that were unique, realistically up front here, we've got manifolds that were in place that connect the brake pressure modulator valve, the brake lines, and the brake pipes that feed that valve. Those manifolds are all replaced with manifolds supplied in this kit by Spiegler. This is a very different kit. You'll see that installing up here, it's restricted access, and it's definitely more challenging than installing brake lines on a motorcycle that does not have ABS as a standard option. But just to give you an idea of the routing, nice and clean end result. They did a great job putting the kit together. Grommets are on all the brake lines, so you're able to reuse your factory brackets in most places. This motorcycle still has the factory banjo bolts on. If you buy a kit from STG, we supply banjo bolts that match the fittings you choose. The reason you see these OEM on here now is because my man Matthias over there, he forgot to put the banjo bolts in the kit when he sent it over. That is what it is. We'll change that after. I just want to point that out for like the 800th time in the video. So pay attention to that. When you're done with the install, very important. Once I get this bike off the table, I'm going to sweep the handlebars back and forth. I want to make sure that I've got good clearance everywhere, that nothing's rubbing or coming in contact. I have not had the opportunity to do that yet because it is up on the work table still at this point. So that's something that I'm going to go over when I'm done, and then I'll make sure that I like where everything is after having done that. Coming up to the master cylinder, give you an idea of the routing there. You can see this is going to give you plenty of room to rotate the master down. If you want to lower your lever height, Ryan doesn't look like he's really adjusted that to a very aggressive position yet, so there's plenty of room to go and rotate that down, which is important. Now we'll move on to the rear. Very similar to the front, minus there's only one caliper. There is a line that runs from the master to the manifold, which then there's a brake pipe that runs up to the brake pressure modulator valve. From there, the pipe returns. We have a brake line that runs to our rear caliper. You're replacing the manifold and both of the lines. This is a restricted access area, okay? There's not a tremendous amount of room to work in there. You're going to want to remove this reservoir so it's kind of out of the way so you have a little more space to work with. During this install, I actually loosened the rear set too. It gave me a little bit of mobility here to help install this brake line. I left the manifold mount bolts loose until I had both of the brake lines installed, everything torqued and tight. Then my final step was to torque down the connector bolt for both of those rear manifolds. I felt that that gave me just that little bit of movement I needed to get everything put together, and also got me the best end result. I really took my time mounting the wheel speed sensor harness. These are all the factory clips reused. These grommets were all on the Spiegler. Brake line fit really good. I was really impressed with it. What I want to stress with this project is its level of difficulty is much higher than, say, installing brake lines on a non-ABS equipped R3 or a non-ABS equipped R6. So I just want you to be ready for that. And it's not going to be at the terminations where it's challenging. It's going to be the manifold areas. Take your time, be patient with that, and get a good finished product. Things to look out for. For me, the biggest thing that I noticed while doing this was there's two brake pipes right here. You can see the plastic shield over them that run really close to that radiator. You're up in here, you're working around quite a bit, and you may tweak those lines a little bit. When you're all done, I want you to make sure that you don't have those brake lines resting dead against that radiator. If you do, you're going to infuse a lot of heat into those lines, and that's not a win. So you want to make sure that you have a gap that was similar to the gap that you had with the stock setup before you started working on it. Okay, let's get this party started. We'll begin by replacing the front brake line. I like to drain all the fluid. What I don't want to have happen is I don't want brake fluid spilling all over the bike. I have the advantage of using my air compressor and a power bleeder. I'm going to use that to suck all the fluid from the reservoir, and then I'll open the bleeder screws down at the calipers and draw the remaining fluid out of the lines and calipers so that when I disassemble this, the spill is going to be very, very minimal. Now, if you don't have a power bleeder at home, what can you do? Well, you can get a little turkey baster from a grocery store, use that to draw the fluid out. As long as you get the fluid out of the reservoir, master area, that will really reduce the spill rate as you disassemble the bike. Okay, while I'm at it, since we're doing a front and rear line kit, I'm going to go ahead and empty the rear as well. Same concept. This one's a little easier to do at home if you don't have a power bleeder. You can literally just tip it over and empty it right into a drain pan. You don't want to get a bunch of brake fluid on the bike. It can be difficult, right? Really hard on painted surfaces. It's important that if you do spill any, you're ready to clean it up. You can see I've got rags and some Maxima cleaners. To manage that. If I do spill, come back here to the rear caliper. And once we get the system drained, we can begin installing that front line kit. Okay. All right, now before we go too much farther, I'm going to get the front lines out. This is an ABS kit, so this is going to retain the factory ABS. A little different than we're used to. Get our front lines out. The lines from Spiegler are all marked. Okay, right caliper, left caliper. There's rear master. We don't need that. Here is the rear caliper. This one does include a nice instruction sheet that I am, of course, going to completely ignore. Okay, I've got the kit opened up. This is a lot different. I've honestly not installed a set of the ABS-friendly lines on modern bikes thus far. I typically eliminate the ABS. Ryan wants to keep it, so we're putting an ABS-friendly kit on the bike. We have lines, one for each front caliper. We have a line that goes from the master cylinder to one of the metal brake pipes that then goes to the ABS brake pressure modulator. It's going to be located right in this area here. Then a pipe is going to come up to the front, which will then feed both calipers. We'll be installing this three-way manifold at the end of that line and then hooking both of these brake lines to it. Just to get a little more access and visibility, especially for the video, I'm going to take the fender off the front of the bike. I think that'll make it a little easier to show you all what we're doing because we need to work up inside the nose of the bike. Look at these wonderful reflectors. These are gone. Can't believe they're still putting those things on these bikes. Reminds me of my Evel Knievel bike with the banana seat and all the reflectors all over the place. It was amazing. Here we are in 2017, still using reflectors. Okay, we'll do that on both sides, get our fender off and just make a little more room. Okay, now we need to begin disconnecting the stock brake lines from the manifold up here, the master cylinder, and the calipers. I'm going to pull off the mount for that ABS sensor. Just want to create space so that I can show you what we're doing and just to make the project flow a little better. Okay, we'll slide that off that stock brake line. That just kind of holds the ABS wheel speed sensor to the brake line. We're going to go ahead and remove that bracket. There's another clip that holds the wheel speed sensor harness to the brake line. We're going to slide that off as well. Those will all need to come off to do the install, so we'll just get that done right out of the gate. Like so. We're going to keep all that and reuse it. There's another one up here. Spiegler does a really good job with their line kit too. They supply grommets, mounting points, so when you're done, you get, you know, pretty close to factory finish, which is what we all want. Okay, you can see also I put large shop rag over the tire. If you leave your fender on, make sure you put that over your fender as well, because it's quite likely we're going to get some dripping of brake fluid up in this area here, and we want to do everything we can to prevent that from getting on the fender and or the tire. Okay, I began by loosening the nut on the forward line, okay? I then pushed it back a bit so I could slide it out of the manifold. I needed to do that in order to get myself some clearance to get in here and break the one in the back loose. All right, got that. Make sure you pay attention to which one went where. That is important. Now that I've done that, we're going to remove the mounting bolt from that manifold. Okay, now we will break loose the fastener that's mounting the manifold to the bike. This has all come apart relatively easy. That's an encouraging sign for sure. Okay. I'm going to keep my stock fastener. I do not believe we will be reusing that. Nevertheless, I want to make sure that I do keep it. Big fan of OEM hardware. Now we will get up in here and slide those two front brake lines out. You can see the front brake lines are actually, the two hoses are joined together in that OE manifold. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and take the brake lines off the front calipers. Just a little bit of spillage. It shouldn't be too much because the system is relatively empty. As you can see, I was ready to contain that. Old t-shirt, something like that would be good for this as well. So I want to make sure we don't have brake fluid on any of the sensitive surfaces. This is all going to be discarded. You will not reuse the crush washers or that OEM banjo bolt. We'll repeat the process on the other side. Okay, now we got to get the brake line from the master that will run down to that manifold. We've got a cable tie that is securing that to the fork. Clip that, release it. I'm going to put a old shop rag here. We will absolutely be getting a little bit of spillage right here, and this is going to help to manage that. Okay, the fastener that mounts this brake hose to the lower triple is part of this bracket here that runs over to the horn. This is so tight over here, I'm unable to break it loose right now, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually remove the bracket from the bike to get myself a little better access. We've got two 10 mil hex head fasteners there that we're going to take out right now so I can break this loose. Okay, I've got the bracket off the bike. Now we're gonna come up to our master and break this banjo bolt loose. Expect some spillage here, okay? Got the rag in place. We will not reuse this OE banjo bolt. The Spiegler kit comes with all new bolts. This is going to allow me now to pull out the brake line that goes from the master and routes back to the brake pressure modulator. And now we're going to have plenty of access to get this fastener out that mounts it to the bracket. Okay, now before we begin installing the new lines, we need to straighten out this bracket. The instructions do show what needs to happen. At the end of the day, I need to get in here with some pliers and bend this down. It's up to you whether or not you would want to remove this from the motorcycle or try and do it on the bike. I'm going to do it on the bike, but I want you to be really careful. If you decide to do the same thing of the radiator, make sure you do not come in contact with that and bend fins and or damage the core. Okay, I ended up just cutting this off. I've got a cutoff wheel up in here. I didn't have to take the bracket off. I got up in there. We're not going to show it on camera because I didn't wear any safety glasses, and everybody gets all pissed off if I don't wear safety glasses and use a cutoff wheel. So that thing's gone. And now we're ready to begin installing the line kit. Okay, now I want to install the manifold in front of the bike. Really important that for this particular connection, this is going to be the brake pipe that comes, this is the output pipe from the brake pressure modulator valve to the manifold that will then feed the front calipers. You have to install this brass olive into the manifold. Okay, hopefully you can see that now. Even as I tip it, it's going to stay in place, okay? So I'm still, as I insert it up in there, I'm going to try and hold it at such an angle that it encourages it staying in position. I'm going to get that brake pipe just finger tight, and now we'll reuse. See, I told you Steve's always right on top of me. Casts a giant shadow too. We'll go ahead and get the fastener in the bracket. Okay, I've got the manifold finger tight on the brake pipe. I now want to get the fastener for the bracket started. I'm going to run this down finger tight. I'm not going to tighten it up all the way right now. In my opinion, cutting that bracket, that's the way to go. I think I got a better end result by doing that than you would have by just bending it with pliers. Okay, now I have our left brake line. I'm going to hook this to the manifold. You can see that this uses, let me show you the line real quick. This is a bubble flared line. So this is going to seal up inside the manifold, right? No olive needed. Let me go ahead and get it routed up in here. This is the mock-up stage. Everything's just finger tight right now. I want to make sure that I've got the fittings on the lines rotated in the best possible position, etc. I want to get a good factory look when we're done. Get that up in there, rotate this over. Okay, I need to rotate this fitting so that the elbow is facing the rear of the bike, and this is then flush with the caliper. Spiegler supplies the tools that it takes to get this done. To be clear, the best way to do this is by pulling the line back off, using a vise if you have it. Most folks probably do not have a vise at home, so I'm going to show you an alternative method. Really important you get equal clamping force to hold that. Slide that in position and rotate your fitting to to the best possible position. I'm gonna have to go just a little bit more. Okay, now you can see, look at that, right? You don't wanna have to put a lot of pressure on the line to get it into position. That's why they've designed them so you're able to rotate the fitting on the end. Our kits, to be clear, when they come from us, they include new banjo bolts that match your fittings. Well, I just got off the phone with my buddy over at Spiegler, Matthias, and they made a little boo-boo when they sent this kit over to us. Actually, he did it, and they did not include the banjo bolts. So for the purpose of this video, we're just gonna reuse the stock ones, which you are free to do if you choose to do so. But remember, the kits you get from STG, we include for you as a courtesy, aluminum banjo bolts that match the fittings on the end of the brake lines. Okay, now we're gonna go ahead and get the other line mocked up. Everything is still loose. Just finger tight right now. Okay, we're gonna need to rotate this fitting clockwise just a little bit. I'm gonna go over to the vise and do that. This is the preferred method, okay? I showed you earlier how you could do it with some channel locks. However, the preferred and most accurate way to do this is by using a vise, because you get really even pressure. Get the brake line installed into the tool they supply. Clamp it down in the vise. And then rotate. You don't want to over rotate. If anything, you might need to come back once more. Let's get this up in position again. And there you go, that actually turned out really good. I gotta put a little bit of pressure on it, but at the end of the day, that is acceptable. I'm gonna reuse that stock banjo. Remember, this is not how the kits come from us. I cleaned all of them beforehand with some brake cleaner, make sure our surface is clean here. Go ahead and get that started. And we'll get this finger tight, like so. Let's take a look at all of our routing. This all looks really good. Now I'm going to tighten up the mounting bolt for that front manifold, like so. That's good and tight now. All right, now I'm going to snug up the output pipe from the brake pressure modulator into that manifold we installed. Remember, everything was only finger tight. Okay, that looks good. Now I'm going to use a 6mm Allen on each of our calipers. I used new crush washers, so the crush washers they supplied fit with the stock bolts, no problem. Get those both tight. And from here, I will snug up the brake pipes from the calipers to the manifolds. I'm using an 11mm line wrench to do this. Okay, so you need a 10 and an 11 to install the line kit on the spike. If you choose to use a standard wrench, you are definitely increasing the possibility that you could round these off. All right, and that is not something that you want to do. Make sure you support the bracket and the manifold when you apply torque. Because that bracket that it's bolted to, that is not the most rigid bracket. Okay, so it's really important that you hold this while you torque it. Okay, that's all set. Okay, now we're going to run the line that goes from the master cylinder down to the input brake pipe that runs to our brake pressure modulator valve. Once again, just hand tight here. Enough that we can continue to work with it. I'm going to feed the line up to the master, and I want to take a look and see if there's going to be any need to rotate the fitting on our master. And we are definitely going to need to rotate that fitting a little bit as well. Okay, I've got the fitting rotated and ready to rock now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide this up into position now, and I'm going to bolt it down at the top, and I'm going to thread the other end of the brake line onto the metal pipe, or the input pipe that feeds the brake pressure modulator. Once again, just to avoid any confusion, the kits that you're going to get from us, they will include the colored banjo bolts. My friend Matthias at Spiegler made a little boo-boo and sent us a kit that did not include all the banjos. Okay, but that is not how yours will show up if in fact you do order from us. Okay, now this brake pipe attached. We do have a mounting bracket too that we're going to repurpose. I'll show you that here in just a minute. I like the way that all has turned out. That is all good to go. Here is the mounting bracket that I took off the stock line. We'll put that over the grommet. That was already on the Spiegler brake line. Give that a little squeeze, and then we will get our mounting fastener and tighten that up. Okay, I've got everything tight. We've not bled the brakes yet, but it's completely installed. And I want to give you an idea of our end result here. See the mounting bracket for the line that comes down from the master. Got the brake pipe in position there, secured. Wheel speed sensor harness is all tied off. Manifold is mounted. Get an idea of the angle I've installed the lines at. Reused the brackets that attach it to the fender mount. Looks good, real happy with it. I definitely took my time with the routing, okay? Down here at the calipers, the manifold, and then of course up here at the master cylinder. You want to make sure that you have really, really good clearance. And when I get done with the bike before it's ridden, I'll sweep the handlebars back and forth to make sure that I don't have any contact or restrictions. Okay, now we're going to remove and replace the rear brake line. This was a complete front and rear kit. That's the way this ABS kit comes. We're going to start by disconnecting all of the retainers that attach our wheel speed sensor to the rear brake line. My expectations are these will all be reused, so take your time taking this stuff apart so that you leave it in a state where you're able to reuse it and you haven't damaged it. Okay, in order to get a little more operating room here, I'm going to remove this bracket right now. Got a 4mm Allen. I've already broken it loose This is where those Motion Pro, ball end Allens are really nice. It allows it to pivot in there a little bit. It's almost like having a universal on it. Get that out of there. Okay, put the bracket to the side. Now that same fastener also held down the manifold for the rear brakes. The brake pipe closest to the front of the bike, that is going to be the input. The one towards the rear, that is the output. In order to break these loose, that bracket really had to be removed so you have access. Once again, said this earlier, line wrench is the way to go here, okay? All right, now we've got a 6 mil Allen back here. Before I discard this rear line, I want to make sure I retrieve the bracket for the manifolds. I'll show you that here in a second. Get my banjo bolt. We're going to take that fastener out and keep this. Okay, now we're going to install the new manifolds back here on the rear lines. Make sure you drop your olive in there first. And we'll begin with the brake line that's closest to the front of the bike. Everything's finger tight to begin with till we get it lined up. Repeat the process here. Very important, you get that centered. Okay, this bracket needs to be modified. Per the instructions, they want you to flatten, right, this flange. I'm actually going to take a cutoff wheel and just remove this from the bracket so I can use it. This allows the manifolds to sit flush on the steel bracket. Okay, now we've got the manifolds both installed, just finger tight. Notice I still got the rag here, a little bit of drippage back here on the mounting bracket. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use some tools that I do have at my disposal, and these are not common hand tools at this point, okay? It's gonna get a little more exotic, but it's gonna make my life a lot easier. I have a universal, quarter drive, bit holder, 5 mil, hex head, couple of extensions, and a ratchet. I'm gonna slide them through the dog bone here on the swing arm. Some of this is gonna be really hard for Steve to show you because our access here is really tight, okay? If you don't have all this at home, you're gonna have to tough this out by using actual Allen, 90-degree Allen heads, right? And you could still do that. You can get this done. It's really not that big of a deal. But I'm gonna use what I have and make it a little bit easier on myself. I'll get the ratchet here on the bottom. There is really good access from the other side. And that's where I'm gonna go now to snug this all up. Just kind of let that hang. Got a 10 mil backup wrench. Get my wrench into position. I think this part back here, these two rear manifolds, may be the most challenging part of this install. Go ahead and apply some good torque to that right now. You know, I'm actually going to back that off a little bit. I want to be able to rotate those, so I'm going to loosen them just a little bit now. And I'll put final torque on these once I have the lines on there. So just loosen that just a bit. Now we're ready to put the brake lines. I'm going to torque down the brake pipes where they go into the manifolds. My 10 mil line wrench out to do that. Here I will end up using a combination of line wrenches and a standard wrench to get these tightened up. When you loosen them, you definitely should consider having a proper line wrench, okay? But when you go to retorque them, it's a different motion, okay? And it's far less likely that you're gonna strip them out if you're not using a line wrench. So the line wrench is preferred, and I would label it best practice. But if you need to, in tightening it down, use a standard open end wrench, you can do that. Okay, now we're ready to put our brake lines in. I'm gonna take a second and really mock this up, make sure I have everything right where I want it. Double check our brake line fitting, make sure it doesn't need to be rotated or anything. That looks pretty good. Where do I want the wiring harness to go? Do I want that to be on the other side of the bracket? So this is the time to make those types of decisions so that when we're done, we've got really nice, clean routing. I think I'm gonna leave that right there. Okay, they'll route in there with the rear wheel speed sensor. So now we'll come in here and just get this started. Remember, we still have those manifolds. They're loose on the mounting bracket, so they can be rotated a little bit. You get this started, just finger tight, enough that I'm still able to move it. Remember, the TS forgot to send me the banjo bolts. We're reusing the stock ones, which is totally fine, it's not a problem. You are able to do that, but your kit, if you buy it from us, is going to come complete with banjo bolts. Trying to get this into position here. Let's see, right here, this line's pretty close, but I do feel like I want to rotate it just a little bit counterclockwise. Okay, I'm going to loosen the rear set footrest on this side just a bit. It's just going to give me a little play to help mounting this, okay? Just a little bit, not a tremendous amount. So allow me to move that around, manipulate it a little bit so I can get this in there easier. Pressure on it forward. You see that really made a pretty significant difference, okay? In the end, this thing's gonna fit really good, but if you tried to leave this hard mounted, really rigid, and put that in there, you're putting yourself in a pretty difficult position. This banjo bolt now, because this is gonna rotate, this fitting's gonna rotate all the way against this stop, I can go ahead and snug that one. If you choose to do what I just showed you there, I would recommend putting some thread locker on your rear set mount bolts. I'm not going to do that right now because we do have rear sets coming for this bike, so this is just going to come back apart, so there's really no point in me doing that. But if this is your bike and this install, this is final and you're going to ride after, go ahead and take the time to do that now. I'm going to go ahead and snug this brake line into that manifold. That's installed in the forwardmost That's the master output or fluid input to the brake pressure modulator. I'm going to use a standard wrench here. All right, we're going to put the brake line from the brake pressure modulator output to the rear caliper in. I'm going to start by just getting this fitting finger tight. You want to be able to still move it, okay? Now we'll be able to route it. Okay, you can see that is going to fit nicely once again. Let's go ahead and grab our banjo bolt. Remember, banjo bolt, crush washer, fitting, crush washer, and then brake component. Also, make sure your mounting surface is clean. You can use a rag, you can use your finger, whatever works for you. But you don't want any debris in between the crush and the braking component. Go ahead and get this finger tight. And you can see they do a nice job with the grommet placement. Kind of check that out right now, see where we're at. If I need to make any adjustments to it, you are able to slide these a little bit, like so. In the end, you know, we want like a factory look and feel with this. Come up here. Before I tighten this, I want to get an idea of length and alignment before I tighten that fitting up there, because once you do that, that's going to have an impact on how it routes. So now I'm going to sit back, take a look, move things around just a little bit and get the best possible fit. Okay, I spent some time getting the brake line and that wheel speed sensor cable routed. Not finished all the way, but I know where it's going to all land, and it's time to snug up and torque this brake fitting for the line that leads to the rear caliper. So we're going to do that now. Once I've done this, I'll finish routing the wheel speed sensor and the brake line and make sure we have everything torqued up just right. And you can see I'm kind of looking to leave a little bit of an upward angle here in the back, okay? I think that is going to be the best final position for this. I'll hold the line as I put that final torque on, because I don't really want it to rotate a lot more. I want it to stay pretty close to where it's at now. Okay, the brake lines are installed. We're going to go over the routing and everything at a different point in the video and really cover that, but now let's focus on bleeding the brakes. Remember, this is an ABS equipped motorcycle, so this is going to be how to bleed the brakes on a motorcycle equipped with anti-lock brakes. End of the day, it really does not differ very much from standard bleeding practice. I've already filled the front reservoir. That's new fluid from a new sealed container. That's very important. Reservoir is full. Remember, we have emptied this system completely when we put the brake line kit on. I am going to use a speed bleeder bag and hose kit. We sell these on the site. They're super cheap. You can use it multiple times, and I got to tell you, this really is a helpful tool because it allows you to do this without making a gigantic mess. The first thing that we need to do is establish some type of flow with the fluid, okay? We had emptied the system completely using that pressure bleeder. Okay, I'm sorry, the vacuum bleeder. So we sucked it out empty. One way to get the fluid moving would be to gravity bleed the brakes a little bit. Got the reservoir full, that is the high point. I now have the bleeder screw open on one of the calipers, Take your time here, right? Let a couple of minutes pass with this all hooked up. You want to keep an eye on it and let it sit until you see some fluid moving. That's one way to do that. Another way would be to get your bag attached like I already have it, right? You don't have to have this, but it just makes the job a lot cleaner. What I want you to do is, bleeder screw is closed. Open the screw, pull the brake lever in a bit, hold the lever, close the screw, release the lever, open the screw, push, tighten, release. And I don't know if Steve can get this or not, but you'll see that I've got fluid beginning to move right now. You can repeat this process, and I'm not taking it all the way to the handlebar, just part way through the stroke in the master cylinder. Repeat this until you see some fluid moving. You can see right there I got a little bit of fluid, okay? Now I'm getting a lot of fluid. If you look at the level on the master, you'll see that that has dropped considerably. What this tells me is we now have fluid flowing. Now that I've got fluid movement, I'm going to come up to the bleeder screw up here at the master. I'm going to do the exact same thing that I was doing down at the calipers. I know that when somebody watches this video, they're going to come in here, well, you should have started at the screw in the top. And I can see why someone would think that, but you need to consider this. The braking system was dry as a popcorn fart because I sucked all of the brake fluid out of it. So if we try to begin up here, knowing that the entire system is nothing but one gigantic air pocket downstream, that is not going to be effective. Begin at the bottom, get fluid moving, then come up to the master cylinder and get fluid moving there. From here, I'm going to come down and begin to work at the calipers again, but you can see we need to address the low fluid level before I do that. Okay, at this point, I've filled the fluid level. It's a little over full, but don't worry about that. We're going to push some of that out. Now let's see if we have a lever. Check that out, okay? Just with what we've done, I already have a reasonable lever. That is not a good finished product. I know there's still air in the system, but nevertheless, that is a great start. So now we're gonna alter the bleeding process a little bit. Instead of just opening the screw and pulling the lever in and holding it, I'm gonna pump it a couple of times while the screw is closed. I will then hold the lever, open the screw, while holding the lever, tighten the bleeder screw again. We'll repeat this process. A little bit of air still. I'm going to do this one more time on this caliper, and then I'm going to move over to the other side. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing at the master. Pump it a couple times, hold it. Go ahead and repeat the process. That is free of air at the master. That's a really solid stock lever. All right, you get a little more feel out of a Brembo, but for a stock master, just a stock Nissan, that is already a really good end result. If you watch the way you take this off, you see I kind of rolled that back real gently and slowly. That allows air to enter at the top. Instead of fluid rolling out at the bottom, it all runs down the hose into the bag. Realistically at this point, there is no air in the system. If there's any, it's just a tickle. I'm gonna show you how to get rid of that too. Two very important things while bleeding these brakes. One, when you fill the fluid for the final time, do not overfill it at all, okay? I will typically actually leave it just a little short of that max line. I'm gonna explain to you why here in a second. If you overfill this and cap it up and seal it off, remember when the fluid gets warm, there is some expansion, okay? So you can see when I said short, I'm talking just a little bit short, not a ton, just a little bit short. There needs to be a pocket of air inside that reservoir for this system to work properly. If you overfill it, it heats, it expands. When the caliper pistons need to come back, the fluid's got nowhere to go. It's a mess. You don't want that. So just remember, never overfill your brake fluid. Now, you want that lever perfect. We want all the air going. We want perfect feel. Okay, get 2 cable ties, right? And this is gonna serve 2 purposes. One, it's gonna help you leak check your system, because remember, we had this thing torn apart big time. This ABS project, this is even a little different than a standard race bike. When I get that lever pumped up nice and firm, you don't need to go crazy with it, and just let that sit. Let it sit for a few hours. Let it sit overnight. So for the air, if there is any air in there, remember that's gonna wanna rise to the top. So just sitting here with that lever, that allows that to flow up into the reservoir. Okay, this is a trick that I've used for a long time, and it works really good. It works great when the bike's sitting in a trailer, actually. Driving down to the racetrack, it shakes it up a little bit. The other thing is this affords you the opportunity to come back and inspect each one of these fittings individually and see if you have any seepage. Okay, now we're gonna do the rear brake on the bike. A little simpler than the front. We only have 1 caliper to deal with, but still remember, we do have more distance to travel than we normally would because of the fact this motorcycle is equipped with ABS. We've got to get the fluid from the master up into the brake pressure modulator, back down the brake pipes, and then to the rear caliper. You could begin with some gravity bleed. I could put this on here, open the screw, and let it sit for a while until I have some movement in the fluid. Or we'll do the same thing that we did in the front. Open the screw, push the pedal, close the screw. And repeat this until we have movement. Keep an eye on your fluid level. And you know, I know where you could look at this and you're like, man, it's not doing anything yet. If the fluid level is dropping, which it is every time, it's working because we're filling the system. It was totally empty, okay? Popcorn fart level dryness. Do not let that empty all the way. I'm gonna go ahead and top that off just a little bit, and we'll get this finished up. And there we go, see? Just like that. Now we can switch, we can start to pump, because we want to get that caliper piston extended all the way against the rotor. Hold it, open the screw, hold the pedal down, close the screw, and we'll repeat that process a couple of times until we have no air coming out of the bleeder screw. Okay, once again, left the fluid just a little short, okay? Probably could have went just a little higher, but at the end of the day, you should be servicing this stuff. And if your brake fluid's low, that means you need brake pads, brake service, regardless. So just a little short, a little paranoid about that. Now I want to hold the pedal down, right? Just like I did in the front. It's a little overkill. Let me show you how we're going to do that. Every bike would be a little different, okay, when it comes to this, because every bike's shaped different opportunities to hook this up. But I'll show you how I would do it on this R6. little safety wire. This is something you should have. You got a sport bike, you should have safety wire in your toolkit. You should have safety wire pliers in your toolkit. Wind that around a little bit. Fold that over like so. Okay, got the wire on the bike. Bring that cable tie I just brought over. Get it started. And now you'll be able to push the pedal down. And this is going to allow me to do two things. Thing one, if there is any air left, this kind of helps it just float to the top magically. Also, I want to leak check every one of these fittings. This is a big job. We did a lot of stuff here. We had a lot of things apart, and you need your brakes to function properly. This isn't even my bike. This is Ryan's bike, so this thing needs to be perfect when it leaves the shop. So, utilize, if you do this install on your R6, utilize these two tips to help you A, evacuate all the air, just even that last little microscopic bit, and B, leak check any fittings. One more step that I'm going to use there. It's going to look a little different for you if you don't have an air compressor, but I'm going to clean it up with a little suspension clean and a blowgun. Okay, back here in the manifold area, just going to spray that all down real nicely. This stuff is really pretty gentle, okay? And all through that, love the Maxima. If you don't have an air compressor, get your old lady's hair dryer. Use that. She won't mind. And I'll do the exact same thing up in the front. Remember, this is a lot gentler than standard brake clean. The brake clean, right, the hardcore stuff, can be kind of tough on some of these surfaces. That's not something that we want. I am going to come in here and follow up in a couple of areas with like a little SC1 or a little speed wax after the fact. I'm going to do this basically everywhere. And when you're done, don't be afraid to give it a little final clean. This stuff is great on the surfaces. It's good practice, keep your bike nice and clean. But this will help just remove, you know, any of the suspension cleaner, any harsher cleaners. You want to follow up relatively quickly if you're using harsh cleaners at all on the bike with something like this. SC1's great, Speed Wax also great. Kind of do this mainly in the areas where we were working. Realistically, you need to clean it up anyway, so good practice to do that. And then follow up, of course, with a nice microfiber cloth. Put a little shine on it. All right, there you have it. There is my Spiegler brake line install on a 2017 ABS equipped Yamaha R6.